Hello, it's Hannah, and you are listening to No Longer Legally Detained, the podcast about life after the psych ward, answering the big question, how to navigate being an adult when you never expected to be one. Hello, it's Hannah, and welcome back to another Thursday Ramble. Thank you so much for all the love and support on the podcast so far. It really does mean so much. Please do keep sharing, liking, and follow the Instagram for more updates. This week, I am joined a bit later in the episode by a special guest. Millie has infiltrated the Thursday podcast and is going to be talking a bit later about her ideas on today's topic. This week has been Volunteers Week, and on Tuesday, it was the Power of Youth Day, which is led by the I Will movement, and it's the idea that young people are changing the world, and all we need to do is let them lead the way and show us how we can make the world a better place. The movement is there to promote and expand the impact of youth voice and social action, and I'm really lucky to be able to say that I have just become an I Will ambassador, and I'm really excited to be part of the movement and part of sharing my social action work that I do, and also hopefully encouraging other people to join in and to use their voice that is absolutely, completely needs to be listened to and is really important. Youth voice is the idea that young people have a voice in society and that we are able to bring about change and represent our own ideas and desires and be part of creating a better and more just world. Youth voice can be about anything. It's about whatever you're passionate about, and it's about young people being the leaders in that area and kind of championing young people's voices in whatever area or interest that they have, and hopefully with that bringing about change and empowering others and empowering themselves to feel able to speak out and to hold larger organisations accountable, and even just smaller things, whether that be in school or whether that be even just in their communities, in their homes, in any way, or it might be on a wider scale. So what do I do in terms of social action? I'm a creative activist, advocate, speaker and mentor. I focus on social injustice, neurodivergence and mental health. I used creativity to discover the real me, and it is now my weapon of choice in the battle for social change and social justice. I've been really lucky that I've already been able to work with over 20 charities in the sector, and I absolutely love collaborating with other young people and different organisations, and together putting our ideas and thoughts and experiences and making noise in the areas that we feel need changing and being part of the movement in hopefully working towards a kinder and fairer place. Part of Tuesday's Power of Youth Day was the hashtag Be That Person, and young people were speaking about who was that person for them when they were younger and kind of inspired them to get involved and be part of change. And at the time I was having a little think and thinking like who did kind of make me want to be involved, and obviously there was lots of different reasons, and I definitely know my own experiences have definitely played a big impact, but I would say my mum is a massive part of why I feel empowered to make change. I think she's an incredibly strong woman. She's someone who has very strong morals and values and has always done the best for me and for anybody who she comes into contact with, regardless of maybe the social expectations around her. And I think when it comes to activism and when it comes to, being part of social change, it can be uncomfortable and it can be scary. And I think I've definitely been inspired by my mum and the fact that I also know that she is there to support me and that she is there to kind of pick up the pieces when things get hard. And I think when it comes to social action, resilience is key. And that thing of, we're going to be knocked down and people are going to just disagree with our opinions. But what my mum always has said to me is, people aren't going to agree with you, but you're as long as you're being true to your core values and you're doing what you know is right, you always have that to come back to. And I've always found that incredibly inspiring. The other person who definitely has massively impacted my activism journey is Zainab, the CEO of Emotion Dysregulation in Autism. I met her as part of our roles as young ambassadors for the National Autistic Society, and I'm forever inspired by absolutely everything she does. I think she's a complete powerhouse and is just phenomenal. And the way that, the way she's overcome her own adversities and the way that all the amazing things that she's done at such a young age for me is so inspiring. And every day, kind of when I'm getting into things, I'm a little bit scared, and I think, I look at people like her and I think, that is so amazing, everything that she's done and continues to do. And that is definitely someone that I go, wow, and is definitely such an inspiration to me and so many others. So today I just really wanted to speak a little bit about Youth Voice, share a bit of my own activism journey. We're going to talk to Millie in a bit about her experiences and her ideas on Youth Voice. But I do want to preface all of this by saying that you don't need to be working with big organisations. You don't need to have a label of an ambassador to be making an impact. Youth Voice comes at all different scales, and absolutely everything is valid, and I don't want anyone to feel any pressure or anything that they're not doing enough. I know that I definitely have that a lot of the time, and when it comes to social action and social change, there is no right or wrong way to do that, and we speak a bit about this later on in the episode. So I'm going to start off this episode with a plea from a lot of young people, a big Youth Voice plea, and that is to make sure you are registered to vote. I think the deadline for registering to vote is the 18th of June, so do just check that yourself as well. But make sure you're registered, make sure you've got everything sorted in that respect, in getting your ID ready. If you don't have ID, there's plenty of different charities and places that are willing to help people get the things they need to be able to vote. We're really lucky to be able to have that right to vote, and although the system might be trying to get harder, there are people out there who can help. So definitely make sure you're registered to vote, and then on the 4th of July, go out there, put a cross in a box, and be part of hopefully creating a future that aligns with all of us. And I think when it comes to voting, it's not about anyone else telling you who to vote. It's just making sure that you do go out and you do that. And it's really, really important. So just make sure that you have definitely registered to be able to vote. And then if you need a postal vote, get that in as well. Make sure you've got that option signed up, because obviously if you can't be there on the 4th of July, you can do a postal vote. And definitely on the 4th of July, let's all get out there and let's all put a cross in a box and utilise that amazing kind of power that we've been given. People fought for a long time for the right to vote, especially women, and it's important that we go out there and show our support and create that power that we have in doing so. So that's enough of me rambling. Let's get into the little chat with Millie and see what else she thinks about Youth Voice. What is Youth Voice? It's something that I guess I feel is really kind of, because I'm in it and talk about it all the time, but I have got Millie here now. Say hello, Millie.
Hello, everybody.
What do you think?
I've infiltrated.
She's infiltrated.
The Thursday episode.
It's a 2 Millie week, this is.
We knew it wouldn't take long.
No. What do you think Youth Voice is?
What do I think Youth Voice
There's
is?
no right. This isn't an interview, by the way. This is just
I'm scared.
Don't be scared.
I guess just young people feeling empowered to use their voice and speak out about the things that they think is right or wrong and what they believe and their beliefs. Yeah.
I like that. It's a great explanation. And have there been any things that you've done in your life so far that you felt you've been, your voice has been listened to, or you've, been part of, I don't know, creating change, or, that kind of activism, advocacy, social action that...
I think it's quite hard because I feel like I think you can do things and end up feeling like you're not actually, although you're trying, you don't actually feel like you are changing anything. Because I know, a lot of the stuff, especially when I was younger, I'd post a lot of Instagram stuff about stuff that I felt was unjust in the world. And then I ended up kind of stopping because I just felt a bit like, oh, I don't really, is this actually changing anything?
I think that is such an interesting thing, because I think people can think of like social justice and think of kind of making change as having to be some really big thing, you know, and obviously there are many people who are making, you know, very big changes, and obviously that is really great, but also interestingly it was the power of youth or Power of Voice Day. I'm going to have to Google what it is. That is on Wednesday, so it was yesterday when this goes out. And that is the idea that social action doesn't have just one look. And I think that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I think I definitely had the idea that when I was younger, I thought, you know, people who are like doing activism or changing other people, you know, who are going down to protest and who are maybe chaining themselves onto buildings and like who are, you know, getting into Parliament and speaking, and who are doing all of those things, and those things, and absolutely they're great, and they do have their place, but not everybody can do that. And actually social action doesn't have to be this massive big, you know, you don't have to chain yourself to a building, and actually suggest probably don't necessarily do that, because, you know, safety first. But that thing of like actually social action and social change can be just really small things that you can do that, although feel really small in the moment, actually do make a big difference.
Yeah, I think a lot about that because, especially in Manchester, there's a lot of protests that go on, or you see a lot of like kind of, I don't know, you see a lot in the streets of people standing up for what they believe in, and I always think like how amazing that people are doing that, and I always try and take a moment to think about like what they're really like cringy that like I'm stopping to take a moment, but just in terms of like respecting the fact that people are going out to do that and thinking about what they're fighting for.
100%.
And taking the time to like listen to what they're fighting for, because I think a lot of the time when I've stood up for things that I believe in, you want people to stop and actually acknowledge
what you're doing.
Yeah,
definitely. And I think, you know, there's obviously a lot of controversy in all of those things, and, you know, again, that is not what this is for here, what this platform's here, and it's not our place to talk about kind of ethically right or wrong in that respect. But I guess what I wanted to kind of bring today in terms of like the youth voice idea is the fact that, you know, obviously if you want to do those big actions, great, go for it. But for people who maybe don't feel comfortable or aren't able for whatever reason, there are these smaller things that you can do, and it can definitely feel, especially, you know, when the world is feeling so big and overwhelming, that your, you know, small thing of smiling at someone, you know, in the street or whatever feels really small, but actually it isn't, because if everybody does those little things, we build up and it becomes a much bigger picture. So I got into, so I did the So thing, Millie, we talked about that the other day. I got into activism in 2020, and I joined Mind, the charity. Mind, okay, everyone probably knows who Mind is, on their Youth Voice advisory panel for their 2021 to 2024 strategy. And that was my first real experience of kind of any kind of like that kind of activism world. Although actually maybe before that, I think I did do like a kind of another like advisory group with the Mix and Shouts, you know, for like the crisis service text thing. But that was my first time I've ever done any of those things, and like for me, it got me hooked. I loved it, and it was, for me, that's like such a way that I like to kind of do social action and guess like making changes, getting involved in different charities and different groups, and that is definitely something that, if you're interested in a specific cause or a specific kind of thing, definitely have a look at charities that are related to that and see if they've got any get involved kind of. They normally have a get involved tab, and there can be lots of different ways that they can share that how you can get involved with their movement, and often offer lots of different ways so that you can find a way that's kind of accessible to you. But yeah. I think there can definitely be the feeling of not doing enough and not having enough being part. And I think, you know, that's definitely things that I'm sure a lot of us feel. And I guess why I wanted to talk about this today, I guess it's like the power of like, especially in relation to Youth Voice, like, I did something the other day at another charity. There's just lots of random charity groups, and they were talking about like how young people don't feel like they either don't feel like their voice is going to be listened to, which, you know, we can all relate to, or the fact that maybe don't feel like they feel disempowered, or that, you know, their voice doesn't need to be heard. And I guess that's kind of why we wanted to speak about this, the idea that actually everybody's voice is valid and worthy. And even when you might feel that your voice is so tiny and small, when we come together, our voice becomes much, much bigger.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel like a big thing for me is that I never feel, or there are topics that I don't feel like educated enough, and there's so much back and forth. A lot of the stuff that I will speak out on is stuff that, like, I trust that I know enough about it, either from personal experience or I'm just educated on the topic.
I think that's really important, the thing of, like, I think in terms of, like, what we're talking about, I do think, like, sticking to what we know, because that's our story. And I guess the activism for other parts that maybe we're not educated about is allowing the platform for the voices of those who are related to that. And I think that can definitely, sometimes feel like, oh, do people not think that I'm supporting of that, or do they think that I only think about my own thing? And it definitely isn't that at all. Like, I'm very passionate that the stories of the people should be done by the people. So, like, I can't stand here and talk about a situation that I don't, even if I may have learned about it, I might have tried to educate myself, still, it's not my story to tell. And I think our job in that situation is to try and educate ourselves, be listening to those people, and definitely, like, I'm always wanting to educate myself more on things, because, you know, you're never going to know everything, are you? But then finding that way to, like, allow the other people to have that platform then, and then obviously when it's something related to something that I do have experience in, then I feel like I can then take that platform for my bit. Does that make sense?
I feel like that's actually a really good way of looking at it, in terms of, like, it not just being about you expressing your beliefs, but actually not just doing that, but also giving platform to other people to be able to express their beliefs as well, and, like, things that you're not, because obviously everyone is going to have different experiences, and, you know, there is, to a degree, no right and wrong when it comes to certain situations, obviously. But
I think it's interesting, actually, because, you know, even, like, the same situation, and, like, you know, I'll do something that's I can relate to, because obviously, like, in terms of, like, say, for example, autistic people who've been hospitalised, and, you know, I've got my own experience of being an autistic person who's been hospitalised, but there are other autistic people who have been hospitalised and will have completely differing opinions to me on, like, the whole situation. And I think that's something that being especially involved in lots of youth voice groups where, you know, you're with other people, you learn, not that you necessarily, I never obviously thought that, like, my way of thinking was the only way, but I think that it really brings to light the idea that actually someone could even have, you know, very similar situations in terms of, like, factors, but have a completely different outlook on it, which is why, you know, everybody's voice is important. I guess, you know, that kind of links back to the whole thing of, like, register to vote, because, you know, every single voice matters, and when you bring all of those together, you get a much more wider picture of what's going on. Whereas if you only have one person's voice or one group of people's voice, you're only looking at it from one angle, and that isn't the whole picture. And yes, you might have differing opinions, but doesn't mean to say that those two differing opinions can't live side by side.
Yeah, exactly. So coming up to the election, we really just want to encourage all young people to get out there and vote, because, you know, I feel like young people often don't vote, and if they don't, then it's silly.
The percent, I think that I did see that again. Like, they, obviously now that the general election's been called, obviously there's lots of statistics flying out, and there's statistics of, you know, the young people voting. You know, people say that we don't vote. Well, let's prove them wrong. Let's go out and do it.
Exactly. And I feel like,
don't forget your ID on the day, though.
No, don't do that. But I also feel like it's all quite overwhelming. I do
Yeah.
have a website actually for people to go and have a look at.
Or I'll link it. I'll link it
Yeah.
on I'll link the website in this description of this podcast if I can, and if not, I will be linked in my Instagram bio.
Yeah, at
So,
Legally Detained.
At Legally Detained.
But it's called isidewith.com, and it's basically, you do a little quiz basically on loads of different topics and what you feel, your beliefs, and then it shows you which party most aligns with what you believe in. And I found that to be really helpful because it's a lot.
There are resources out there about, you know, voting and like supporting young people, and that thing of obviously not telling, you know, anyone who to vote for, because obviously that's absolutely, you know, your own choice. But that idea of supporting to work out how you find out the information so you can make that informed decision. Because actually, I think sometimes there can be that thing of thinking, that door. Sometimes people can think that by, you know, it's not about offering advice on who to vote for, because that is obviously absolutely, you know, that's not okay. That's a personal thing. But it's about finding that support to go, right, actually, how do I even go about thinking about what is a party? What do they stand by? What is the point of all of this? And I think actually that's kind of more of the narrative that needs to be out there, you know, of how young people can find out what they need to do.
You almost need someone who is completely unbiased. I always think this when it comes, I say this is my first time voting in a general election, so I'm a bit nervous, got to get it right. But also, you know,
I think I think it's an important thing to say as well, like being your first time, and I'm sure there are other young people who this is their first time voting in a general election, and I suppose that's probably a barrier for people to vote, because they think, what if I do it wrong? Well, firstly, follow the instructions. It's pretty simple when you get in there. But in terms of
your vote, realistically, if enough of it is that thing of like power in numbers.
Yeah.
But if you get it wrong, which there's not really a wrong option.
No, there's not a wrong option.
If you get it wrong, it's one vote out of the whole country of votes, and that might make you think, oh, well, why does it matter if I vote?
It does matter. It does matter.
It does matter.
It adds up. But ultimately, also, I think, you know, we're going to link some of these resources, and I guess like finding places that can support you to like make your decision.
Yeah.
And, you know, as long as you've thought it through, and you've looked, especially I'm interested in this website to find out, and like, you know, you've looked in it, it's such an overwhelming thing.
Yeah.
And you've looked it through, you know, and you've stuck, I would say, you know, obviously there's loads of conversations about it, and obviously you've got to do what's right for you and think about your own morals and values, and from that you make your decision, and ultimately that is right for you. And so there isn't, and you know, I guess it's that thing of like, it's hard to not be swayed by other people. And ultimately, when you're in there, no one else is looking at what you're putting on the page, or the piece of paper, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Someone with a bit of political knowledge put together a thing
Yes.
that does all of the policies of each thing.
That would
send it to us. And
you
we'll
know what you
promote
need.
it.
You know what you need. You know, like when if you've gone on the Apple website and you've got all the phones and you can compare them.
Yes,
that is what you need for political. You need all the political parties, all the different categories, and then you need to do the comparison. But it needs to be done by someone who is impartial.
To be fair, the website does do a little bit of that, because it just tells you who you match most with, and then like
you can. And I think I do. And actually, I've actually not thought about kind of. I don't think about general elections very often, surprisingly. I'm not a politics student, but I think that is really interesting. Actually, that idea that actually, especially for young people, when it's like your first coming in, and especially like at 18, 19, kind of 20, or however old, when you're first coming into voting, you've only ever really had whoever you've lived with kind of political views. You're now becoming your own person. You're kind of hearing stuff on social media, you're hearing stuff from like universities and stuff, and you're thinking you've not really had enough time to build your own thoughts before you're now like, right, you're going to vote for the next leader of this country, and you're like, I'm a bit unprepared for this, you've only given me 2 months.
Exactly.
But I think the interesting will
Also
definitely...
the political system is a little bit confusing, because it's
Yes.
you're not voting for the leader of the country,
No,
you're voting for the leader of your area.
Exactly, and I think...
And
that's something I think that I obviously do know that now, but because obviously I've voted a few times, not in a general election. I think I've only voted once in a general election, I would have to say, I don't know. But, God, I'm not keeping tally.
I've got a question for you, actually, Hannah.
Yeah.
Do you get to vote whilst you're in the psych ward? Sorry, this has gone off on a bit of a tangent.
It has gone off on a tangent.
But do you get to
Do
vote?
you get to vote? Well, if you're sectioned, you're deemed to not necessarily have capacity.
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I guess if you're really poorly and psychotic, maybe you probably wouldn't be able to vote, would you? Because you wouldn't be able to. No, that's a really interesting point. I don't know. I'm gonna have to Google that later. I want to know now.
Yeah. And on that note, if you're not living at home, get yourself sorted to do a postal vote.
Yes, maybe you can do a postal vote if you're in the psych ward.
Maybe.
But I guess I imagine if you're an informal patient, so you're there like on your own free will, as long as you're well enough, because you'd have to be well enough to know there was an election, wouldn't you? You probably can definitely vote, I would say. But it would be interesting about section detained patients, how much of their human rights are taken away from them. Crazy times. It's an interesting point, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely get that postal vote, or 4th of July, Pat's birthday. Let's all get out there.
Get out there and vote, kids.
But yeah, this is kind of a bit of a different episode, but being an activist is something that, I never thought I would get into, but actually, we can all be advocates and activists in our own way, and actually it isn't this whole big movement of, having to be doing anything majorly dramatic, but actually, we all can, just by standing up for what we believe in, even in our, small ways in our own lives, and whether that's, picking up some litter off the floor, or standing up for a friend who's having a tricky situation. I think those things really do make a difference, and it's really important. So we will make sure we link those things to the Instagram, and maybe on here if we can, because it's definitely very daunting. And I would imagine also lots of the charities like the Mix maybe, and some of the I Will movement, they will probably have some guides and supports on finding out information about kind of voting in general elections, as well as just general everyday kind of making a difference things. So definitely check those things out. I think it's really important. But anything else to say, Millie?
No, thank you for having me on a Thursday.
That's okay, we've loved having you on a Thursday.
It's a bit more serious than our Monday morning.
It's a bit more serious, yeah. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you've enjoyed, please do like and share the podcast. And I shall see you next week for another episode. Bye-bye.